Hey, welcome back everyone. This has been a tough one actually, but it's the 172nd Airfix English Electric Lightning F.2A. As I say, this was a bit of a difficult one. There's a couple interesting things that happen in this. One is that I go down the real metal foil route, which, turned out to be a drag, but we'll discuss that as we go through. And the other one, I do have to apologize. It's probably almost a month since I did I think the Provost. And I got totally bogged down with an operation. For those that are young, if you've never had your wisdom teeth done, get them done when you're young, because when you're older, that is a nightmare. I had 15 stitches in my mouth. So, don't play around with that stuff. Anyway, back to this one. There's two options. They're both Germany, I think 1970, 1973. I decided in my wisdom to go down the metal foil route. One of the ideas behind that was I've always been curious about it, and I do have to give a shout out to Richard's Modelling Adventures. He seems to really have it down. In this case, I was eager to try it, and we'll see how that turned out. The kit itself, I think it's 2016 from memory, so it's not old, but I tend to think of that period with Airfix as probably a little bit wobbly. Most of it goes together well, but there are a couple snags. The intake and the exhausts really, they're not great. I would prefer to have seen a separate intake ring. All the rest of it's pretty neat, the usual decals, there's no huge surprises there. I didn't go into a great lot of detail on the cockpit itself. I did what I could there, but it wasn't something I was too fixated on. In truth, I was as much just hurrying along to get this done so that I could try out the foil. And this one almost turned out by accident. I was invited to, it was a sort of, one of those heritage train trips down south on an old diesel and 1950s carriages and so on. And there was a bit of an exhibition there. It was mostly model railway and that side of things, but they actually did have a stall with a few models, and by chance the appropriate glue to do the foil. I had the Lightning sitting there, thought it would be a good one to do. And interestingly, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, I did the 148 Lightning, the Airfix one, and it was the red one. Some of you will know it. I can't say I've ever really been happy with the Lightning I've done. I don't know why. They always seem to turn into a bit of a drag for me. And that's in the context of, I think they're a spectacular aeroplane. I actually love the real aeroplane, but I've, for some reason, just never really enjoyed doing them as a kit or a model. So, this is just the usual, standard cockpit, Airfix pilot, and so on. You could see there that I'm again using Mr. Colour. It was just aircraft grey. I think that was pretty standard on the Lightnings. No huge surprises here. One good thing, I do like the decals for 172nd cockpits. Obviously, if it's a good kit, like I've got some in the stash there, they're a lot more expensive. You want to spend a bit more time on them, but I think this kit's about, say, $25-$30 in Australia. So I guess £15 in the US, $10 USA, whatever it is. So there's no great dramas here. The cockpit, I just wanted something up and running, basically. I did get a stash of Alclad. I've had it on and off for a while. I bought a bunch of them again. I have mixed feelings on Alclad. It just doesn't seem as robust, but you can get a really nice finish with it. So this is me doing the intakes and essentially, It's all that intake and whatever else you call it at the front, where the air goes in the thing, if that makes sense, to sound really professional. So I'm just coming over with some Alclad to add some colour here. It's one of those ones where you put this work in, and then when you put it together, you can't see a damn thing down there. There's nothing. Even with a torch, it's too tight. And I did originally think, these would be good parts to at least try the metal foil on. But yeah, where you do get into trouble is the tight curvatures. With hindsight, I think larger scale planes would be much better for the foil. I had the sort of dumb logic that cheap plane, small plane, it should be easy to do, but where you do get snagged is on the tight curves, because obviously at smaller scale the curvatures are tighter. So this is the engine assembly. That's that twin engine of the Lightning, where they're one on top of each other. Interestingly, this is the later variant with the fuel tank added on the bottom. I actually don't like that. I understand the reason why, with their range of like 5 minutes or whatever originally, but they kind of look pregnant, the later versions. Anyway, back to their engine. This all goes together nicely, and at this point it's all fitting well. As I say, I've given it a coat of paint, but if I was doing it again, I don't think I'd even bother, because there's almost zero chance of seeing in there. So I've just used gunmetal for these exhausts. That all goes together well. No great dramas. Where there is a poor fit is on the external exhaust. That does not fit well. I think there's about a mil gap with the fuselage, unless I screwed something up. Just beware on this part if you're doing it. There is a little notch there that has to line up, has to seat in there, as you can see. But like I say, the Alclads always, I think they give a really nice finish, but durability, that worries me. In this case, it's fine for these type of standalone components, if you'd call it that, but the issue becomes if you want to later mask it and so on, then you definitely are going to need to use some clear coats and so on. So there's just more of this assembling the engine, and what's going to happen is the cockpit, as you can see, the cockpit is going to sit on top and the nose wheel well's integral there. But once that cowling goes on, you can't really see anything in there at all. So to a degree, it was a waste of time. The fit itself here, I wouldn't have said was great, and I did have to jam it all together. That's the simple truth. So jumping ahead, you can see I've already foiled one side. Actually, what I did do is I thought before I make a video and well, not make a video, but film that part, I wanted to at least try it out without the worry of a camera or making myself look silly. So this is just basically doing that fuel add-on. I guess that's what it's called, extension that they added on. But the other side, I did jump ahead and do some of the foil, but we will be getting into that very shortly. Again, here, the fit wasn't 100%, did need a little bit of filing. No great dramas, but on the plane itself, there's probably about, I don't know, a fingernail of width that did need to be removed there, and you can see on the nose cowling that it's not an ideal fit. I would rather that had been molded separately, because you do end up having to jam the nose together a bit. Once that's all right, then the fuselage is fine, and as I say, the exhaust was a bit as well. Someone who has a lot more patience would be able to fiddle with it a bit more and get it together. I'm not quite sure why they even did the fuel tanks as essentially an extra 4-piece assembly. It goes together nice enough. I didn't get too hung up on it. As I say, this build for me was a bit of an experiment because I thought it would be a good one to try the foil on. As I say, in hindsight, 1/72 is probably not the best place to start, but looking at the foil there, it from my point of view, even watching the video now, it actually looks better in the video than I feel like it was in reality. It's nice enough, but yeah, there's a couple bits that I'd say I wasn't totally happy with. So that's where it's at this point. With the foil itself, I did have trouble finding, what would you say, the rolls at the supermarket and so on that didn't have some sort of embossing and branding in them. I found this one where it was every, say, 6 inches or something, which would give me something workable to use. And the other thing I did is I didn't want it to be super shiny, so I used, what would you call it, the matte side. And I think that's just a personal choice, an aesthetic type issue. And you can see it's plenty shiny enough. And there's the micro metal foil adhesive. Definitely, I'd say if you are going to give this a try, hold off until you get this glue. And yeah, I've tried sort of trying to think of the word now because I was just about to swear, but apologies. If you are going to try this, hold off until you get the proper glue, because I've tried it in the past messing around with different glues and things, but it really never worked. This glue really does work. So you paint it on, brush it on, and then the instructions say you have to let it sit, kind of dry off a bit till it's almost clear. I did find that there was a bit of an art in knowing when to put it on, because if you put it on too early, it just slides around. It's obviously not going to glue anything. And if you leave it too late, it's a bit like CA, it'll just snap. So there was this sort of sweet spot, which I more learned towards the end of the right timing on when to apply the foil. So essentially you put the glue down, and then this is just kitchen foil. So you put the glue down, let it cure for a bit, and then apply your strips of foil. And as you can see here, I'm using a split razor to separate that. One thing I definitely would say, whatever blade you're using, you do need a sharp one. As silly as it sounds, you don't want this tearing. While you're putting it on and the glue hasn't set, that's when it's a bit easy to push it out of place and I guess make a mess of it, start again, all of that. However, the converse of that is once it has set, I was surprised at just how strong it is. I actually overdid a bit on the nose and I had trouble getting it off. One of the interesting things here, I'm just using the old school razor blades, and I learnt this more from the fly fishing crowd, another hobby, and that was just how to split those double-edged blades in half. You do it while they're in the packet. Go watch some fly fishing videos and you'll see how they do it. It's just a handy thing to know. So once the foil goes down, at this point it's pretty well set, so I'm just trimming it off, and that's easier than I expected it was, because the panel lines can be your guide, and with the sharp blade it'll just follow along, as you can see here. There are no great dramas with that at all. Where I did tend to get into problems was where there was edging. It wasn't a huge problem, but my biggest headache was on some of the tight curves and some of the, the higher molding. So even on the body there, on the aft section, you can see there's almost some, I don't know what you call them, like extrusions. This is where I was clearing out the wing joint, And I'm just coming back now with a cotton bud Q-tip, whichever your preference is to call it, and pressing it in. The other big surprise I did have here was just how much force I did need to put into it. And at first I was a bit wary of using too much force, thinking I'll tear it and so on, but nowhere did I tear it during the whole build. It is really, once that glue has gone down, this is really quite strong stuff. Actually stronger than the Alclad, that's for sure. that was a big surprise to me. So I'm just working along the fuselage at this point and doing what you'd say little sections at a time. I come back with the toothpick just to run it across the panel lines. And again, I was worried at first that I might end up tearing through the foil, but no, it is really pretty tough at this point. So there's more glue going on. As I say, I was just doing a section at a time. If you were really good at this and had the patience, you would actually probably, I could see where you would do it panel by panel. That would be really cool. I just don't have that sort of patience. This is where I did start to get into a bit of trouble, is on that dorsal section and any of the tight curves, especially as you come rearward. So here's just more cutting through on those wing sections. I was worried about having foil there and then not being able to glue them. In reality, I ended up taking off too much foil on the upper surface and then had to come back and add a couple strips. Like I say, the toothpick, no dramas at all. You would think it would tear the foil, but during the whole build, nowhere. And it just gave that deeper impression on the panel lines. You could do it by just continuing to press harder and harder, but like I say, I was just surprised at how much force you did need to get that embossing itself in. So here I'm coming across again, just really rubbing it in. Essentially what I'd do is use the toothpick to get the panel lines and then almost to buff it out on top of that in case I had added any scratches or anything like that. The air brake section, that wasn't as hard as I thought. On the initial side that I did, I think it was the port side, I did the internal of the air brake separately, but interestingly on the starboard side, I realized didn't need to do that. So it really is quite flexible and it'll stretch a lot. But you can see on the fuselage there where, especially on the aft section, there was tight curves combined with extrusions, and that did cause me some headaches. The wings, they were easy. By this point, I had already done the fuselage itself, so there was no great surprises for me at this point, and especially the Lightning's wings, they're so square, if that makes sense. Probably the wrong word, but I think you know what I mean. It's basically just straight lines, so I didn't have any huge issues with that. What I did think about, though, was just the fact that I think I spent 2 weeks to do the foil, and I could have used a metal paint in, say, 30 minutes. The dilemma I have is, yes, I do think the foil looks better, but maybe 10% better for 2 weeks compared to 30 minutes of work to just airbrush metallics. Even if I said it was a day of work, I'd still be ahead just using paints. So my thoughts at this point are, yes, I will use the foil technique again, but it would probably be, I'd probably be limiting it to special builds, or if you were doing show build or something like that. I'm not sure I would want to be spending 2 to 3 weeks each evening doing a bit of painting on glue and adding foil. and then smoothing it out. If you're one of those kids that liked playing with the foil of your Easter eggs and all that sort of stuff, you'll love this, because there's a lot of smoothing out foil. It's just, and in some ways that's quite therapeutic in itself, I suppose. I did enjoy, once the foil is down and in place, that's quite relaxing in itself, just coming back, pressing and embossing. I have done this in flight, so that's why you're not going to see any undercarriage here, and the wheel well covers are up. My thinking was really quite simple, that one, my focus of the build was more on the foil than getting caught up in landing gears and so on. And two, the Lightning is such a cool, fast plane. It should be flown in flight in my mind. A lot of planes, as soon as the undercarriage comes down, they lose some of the elegance. So that's what I was thinking. So the wings, you can see here, it was pretty straightforward at this point. And as I say, I'd also gained a bit of experience the hard way doing the fuselage. The wings themselves didn't take me too long. I think a couple hours, if that. The edges I still haven't quite figured out. In principle, it was just a question of rolling them around. Didn't quite seem to go that way, because mine, I know even on the finished plane, I can still lift a part of, well, you can see there near my fingers where just handling it, some of the edges will start to lift. It's not a big deal, but it was just something I noticed. I probably need some more glue there or something. So here I am, just coming back over, toothpickerizing it again, whatever you would want to call that. And I'm going to just emphasize just how durable this is at this point. Yeah, you can tear it at the edges, but even if you did, I didn't, but even if one of those edge sections lifted up, I got a feeling that it would probably just peel back to where the glue is. And you can see I'm really getting into it there before, just using some kitchen paper and really buffing it out. So here's the upper surface of the wing. Again, much the same stuff, no great dramas. There wasn't anything at this point that really stood out. I think the light sockets, or whatever you'd call them, those notches, that you would think that you'd get snagged on them, but no, I didn't have any great dramas. Again, the foil does stretch. It's obviously flexible, but it'll stretch a long way, so I just went over them and then come back later, cut down the center and then smooth them out. So yeah, that's my brilliant technique. And interestingly, you can see even these odd creases and so on. Someone who's a lot more patient would do this better than me, but even with my thumb and being a bit rough, all of that will smooth right out. And that's just cutting along that wing root there. So you can see here, it's already starting to look pretty good. And interestingly, one of the bits, this is where I'm a bit odd and everyone's quirky, I suppose. I was getting annoyed at, I think for a week or two, I kept finding little bits of foil all around the house. That stuff goes everywhere. You wouldn't think so, but as you're cutting and trimming, it piles up. At one point, I was thinking, well, what would I say? If police turned up, it looks like I'm running some sort of weird, what would you say? Weird drug lab, I guess, because I had foil scattered all around the place. I had even bought myself a new ring light the other week, one of those cheapish ones, so I can take some photos a bit better. And I was thinking, this is looking really wacky at the moment. This is one of the bits I actually did enjoy, was just coming back and doing those panel lines. again, some of this is quite relaxing. My big dilemma for the whole thing was just generally that it took a lot more time than I expected. And I don't know, I just wasn't 100% into the build. As I say, it was on the back of an operation. I was still recovering when I started it, so that probably didn't help. I did get a bit frustrated with a bit of the fitting. As I say, to me, there's a sort of period there where Airfix seemed to lose the way. I think there was some fit issues and problems coming out for a few years there where they weren't as good as they could have been. And I think this kit is probably from that period. As I say, I think it's 2016. I don't get too hung up on the details of the history of all the different boxes and so on, but yeah, it's probably not one that I'd rush out and buy again. Like I say, just some of the fit on the nose and the exhaust, yeah, it's just a little bit too frustrating. And probably that's me being a bit spoilt as well. So you can see here, it's really almost coming together. And in a lot of ways, yes, I'm happy with it. And in other ways, I'm not, because you know yourself, when you build your own kit, you know all the little things that you might not tell everyone else. So I could say to you, hey, that looks great now, all perfect. But in truth, when I look at it, I can see where there's a bunch of problems. One thing to keep in mind if you are doing this is that you have to be aware that you're going to have to use CA glue, super glue, whatever you want to call it, on some of the foil joints. Because if you foiled over it, obviously normal plastic glue is not going to work. This was another one of my weird experiments. Don't ask me what I was thinking, but I did give it an airbrush of clear gloss, and interestingly, the gloss gave it a really nice matte effect. Then I wasn't happy with it, so I decided to polish off parts of it to give it a kind of weathered, oxidized look, which you can see there. Because one of the things that I've always been wary of, and I've never really been able to do it well, is that when it's a uniform color, or in this case metal, or like if you were doing, say, one of the all black or so on, it's quite hard to get right. I think so. So I was wanting to add that sort of bit of shading and weathering, because I've never actually seen a clean lightning for some reason. I have no idea why, but all the ones I've ever seen photos of, and I think even as a kid I can remember seeing a couple when I was in UK, but I was trying to just give it a bit more, I don't know, realistic look. And of course the typical thing with weathering is you can use it to try and hide your mistakes. No one says that, but I think there's a bit of truth in it. But like I say, the thing definitely with lightnings, for some reason I've just never seen a clean shiny one. They always look a bit grungy. I don't necessarily know why that was or is, but in my mind at least I was trying to think of that in terms of effect. Rather than having a super shining lightning, I did want it to at least have a bit of variety on that metal surface. So that's it really starting to come together. Those lines, whatever you call them, guidelines and so on the wing, I would say if you've never done it before, be careful with them and just do it the way I'm doing it. Those that know what you're doing, you're not going to have any trouble with them. The issue is that if you're not careful, you can end up breaking them, which is not a big drama, but where it can become a real problem is if you try and lift them off independently and they start to twist and tangle on each other. That's when you can get into a real mess with any of those thin decals. So I'm just coming through, getting them out of the way. At this point, yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, but in truth, there's that feeling, I just want it done. It's sat there on my bench now for, I think, almost 3 weeks, doing bits and bits, whereas I thought originally I'd have it done in the week. I am quite happy with, almost the effect of bit of polishing and mixed with still some of the oxidized look from the clear lacquer and so on. I think that's come up all right. So there you can see we're right into decals at this point. There's the roundels going on. For some reason that almost went on perfect first time. Again, no huge dramas doing them. Always looks cool when you get to this point. This is, in any build, once I get the roundels on, that's when I feel like, it's starting to really come together. All the work's really paying off. So in summary, yes, I do like the metal foil technique, and I would do it again, but more judiciously. I think if I was going to do it again, it would be maybe 148. I'm not sure I want to jump into a 132nd, but I would suggest maybe 148 rather than 172nd. Otherwise, you're just kind of getting bogged on some really tight curves. Even on something like a Lightning, I kind of forgot about the rounded fuel tank and all that kind of side of it. Other than that, I think I'll probably stick with airbrush, be done in 30 minutes, each to their own. I just found it a real grind. What I've done here is come in and doing some kind of a mixture of, I think this is Starship Filth. This is one of the, I think it's Abteilung. Yeah, just one of those ready-made colours. I've got the tube here. I think it's AK. Whoever makes it. Anyway, it's really pretty standard stuff, and I've heard good things about it. So I thought this was another opportunity just to try and see how it comes out. So I'm just really using another half, what would you say, bit of dot filtering, I suppose. And in some ways, this build turned into a bit of a mule for me to try out some new things. I'm just coming across, putting bits of that, where I think is appropriate. So you can see there, plenty of dots at this point, probably too much, but it's easy enough to take off. So you don't have to worry about that at this point. Like I say, I just never really seen a clean Lightning, so I wanted to give that variation just to super shiny metal. So I'm just coming through now and pulling this down. I'm just using, the mineral spirits. Just the usual stuff. Again, no great surprises, but I am quite happy with how this is looking here at this point. It's really starting to give a bit of the effect that I wanted. I'm not entirely happy with the build on the whole, but like I say, it was a good experiment. I did get to try a few things that I'd wanted to try for a long time, and I didn't quite know even how to go about it, I suppose. So in that sense, the plane itself has been a good experiment for me. And I don't regret it in that sense at all. But would I do it again? Probably not. I can't say I'd be in a huge hurry to do it. This is just some of the Tamiya dark brown panel liner. Again, just trying to give a bit of variation to the plane itself. I want it to be I don't like over weathering, but I do sometimes like the plane to actually look like it's been used. Depends what I'm doing. And here I'm just coming back, doing the final antenna and so on. Really just a bit of detail. Anyway, I do hope you like that. Apologies that there's been a bit of a delay since the last video. I do hope you'll subscribe, and especially if you've got any comments and so on, hit me up with them. Always happy to hear from everyone. So there it is, all done, and I'll put some photos up. Have a great time with your own modeling. I'd like to think that you can do much better than I have with my experimental plane here, which it was. But all the best, and thank you again for watching. Have fun with your modeling. See you in the next one. Bye.